I always thought silence was comforting, the kind that settles over the house after finally putting a baby down for a nap. But that afternoon, silence betrayed me. I set the baby monitor beside me on the kitchen counter, meaning to end the call after checking the sound. I must have been distracted, my mind foggy from lack of sleep, from feeling like I was walking through days made of glass. I didn't notice the faint green light still glowing. I only noticed the voices. At first it was just a murmur, two low tones blending together. I froze, thinking the monitor had picked up neighbors or static. But then my name floated through the speaker. Soft, sharp, unmistakable. Evan. And Marjorie. In the nursery. Whispering, my stomach tightened. Why were they in there together? Why were they whispering? I pressed the monitor closer, pulse thudding in my ears. "She's becoming suspicious," Evan murmured. "Then we need to move faster," Marjorie replied, her voice cold as steel. "We don't have much time. 10 days, Evan. 10. I gripped the counter to steady myself. The air around me felt suddenly heavier, like the walls had leaned in to listen too. Suspicious of what? Move faster for what? They spoke about papers, accounts, and a word that repeated like a drumbeat. Transfer. Every instinct in my body screamed that something was terribly wrong. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the monitor. When Marjorie said, "Lena won't handle the truth well," my breath caught in my throat. The truth. 10 days. A transfer. And my husband whispering about me like I was already gone. I didn't know it yet, but this was the moment everything in my life cracked wide open. I spent the rest of the afternoon moving like a ghost through my own home. Every sound made me jump. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a warning. I replayed their whispered words over and over, until each one felt like a needle pressing against my nerves. By the time Evan came home, I'd rehearsed a dozen different ways to confront him. Calm, angry, sarcastic. But when he walked through the door with that familiar warm smile, everything in me collapsed into confusion. How could someone who looked so gentle speak about me like that? He kissed my forehead. "Rough day?" he asked. I stepped back. "I heard you," I said. My voice shook despite my effort to steady it. "Through the baby monitor. You and your mother. Talking about me." His smile didn't falter. Not even a crack. Instead, his expression softened. Concerned, patient, almost pitying. "Lena, sweetheart," he said gently, "you must have heard one of the old recordings." The words hit me like icy water. "What recordings?" I demanded. "The monitor saved a few audio files from when we first installed it. You probably clicked something by accident." He placed a hand on my shoulder, thumb brushing the fabric like he was soothing a frightened animal. "You've been exhausted, stressed. It's easy to mishear things." The calm confidence in his tone made me feel small, unstable, like I was the problem, like I was unraveling. But something sharp inside me whispered, "No, he's lying." And later, when I checked the monitor's settings myself and found it had no recording feature at all, that whisper turned into certainty. Evan wasn't confused. He wasn't mistaken. He was gaslighting me, deliberately and skillfully. That night, Evan slept beside me like a man with a clear conscience, breathing slow, steady, peaceful. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every inhale of his feeling like an accusation. How could he sleep so easily after lying to my face? By dawn, exhaustion and fear had hardened into something else. Resolve. If Evan wanted to make me feel crazy, I needed proof I wasn't. While he showered, I took his laptop from the dresser. My hands trembled, but not from guilt. From dread. The kind of dread that whispers, "Whatever you find, you can't unfind." His password was still the same. Our wedding date. I almost laughed at the bitter irony. His email opened to a flood of unread financial statements. I clicked one, then another. At first, everything looked normal. Routine payments, salary deposits. But then I noticed a line item buried deep in his transactions. $4, $200 withdrawal, cash, repeated twice a month. We were not cash people. Evan despised carrying bills. I clicked further. A retainer payment to a law office I'd never heard of. A consultation fee labeled simply family adjustment planning. And another transfer, large, discreet, sent to an account that wasn't ours. My mouth went dry. Why was he hiding money? Why hire a lawyer behind my back? And what on earth was family adjustment? I heard water stop upstairs. Panic shot through me. I closed the laptop so fast it nearly snapped shut on my fingers. I slipped it back into place and hurried to the kitchen, heart pounding with a new, terrifying clarity. Evan was hiding things from me. Big things. Things that didn't feel like the mistakes of a confused husband, but the movements of a man preparing for something. Something that didn't include me. For the next few days, I lived with a constant flutter in my stomach, like my body already knew something I hadn't fully admitted yet. Evan acted normal, almost too normal. Making breakfast. Kissing the baby's forehead. Asking how I slept. I lied every time. I hadn't slept at all. It was on the third day that I first noticed him. I was rocking the stroller back and forth on our driveway, trying to calm the baby after another restless nap, when a man lingered at the end of the street. He wore a delivery vest, cheap, flimsy, the kind sold in bulk online. He held a package under one arm but didn't approach any door. Instead, he stared at his phone, then looked up at our house, right at me. I felt my skin prickle. When I blinked, he waved quickly, as if to mask the awkwardness, and walked off. I tried to shrug it off. Wrong address, maybe. But the next morning, he appeared again. This time dressed as a dog walker, leash in hand, no dog attached. He paused by our mailbox for so long, I finally stepped outside with a half-forced smile. "Can I help you?" I called. He didn't answer. He just dipped his head, muttered something, and hurried away. By the fifth day, I saw him parked across the street in a dusty gray sedan, tinted windows rolled halfway down, pretending to read a newspaper. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was he watching me? Or the baby? Or was he sent by Evan? The thought wrapped icy fingers around my spine. Because if Evan had hired someone to watch us, then whatever he was planning, it had already begun. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything in my life was suddenly connected by invisible threads. Evan's lies, the man on the street, the whispers in the nursery. And every thread seemed to lead back to one person, Marjorie. Cold, polished, unreadable Marjorie. A woman who looked at me like I was a temporary inconvenience in her son's life. One afternoon, when Evan insisted on taking the baby to visit Grandma, my nerves snapped. Something in my gut screamed that I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. So when they left, I opened my laptop and searched her name. At first, nothing. Charity events, garden club photos, articles praising her for her dedication to family. But then, buried deep in an archive, an old, yellowed newspaper clipping surfaced. Local man dies in unexplained home accident. Next line, survived by his wife, Marjorie Hensley. I read it twice. 3 times. My pulse thudded in my ears. The article was vague, frustratingly so. Described the husband's fall as, quote, unexpected, unwitnessed, inconclusive, no charges filed. No further investigation pursued. I dug deeper, clicking related links like my life depended on it. Another piece mentioned domestic disputes, unverified but whispered by neighbors. A third alluded to financial troubles that mysteriously resolved after his death. A cold weight settled in my stomach. If Marjorie had already outlived one husband under uncertain circumstances, what might she be capable of now? And why was she suddenly so invested in my family, my life, my child? I closed my laptop with shaking hands. Suddenly, her stiff hugs, her watchful eyes, her constant presence didn't feel like meddling. It felt like a warning. I knew I shouldn't be in Marjorie's closet. The thought alone made my heart pound like a drum in my chest. But something about her icy calm, the way she watched me with thinly veiled judgment, pushed me toward a truth I couldn't ignore. The closet door was heavy, its hinges groaning like a warning. I slipped inside, careful not to disturb the rows of winter coats and neatly stacked boxes. The smell of lavender mixed with mothballs made me dizzy. And then I saw it, a small, locked storage box tucked behind a stack of photo albums. My fingers shook as I fumbled with the lock, trying every combination that might make sense. Birthdays, anniversaries, even random numbers I'd overheard her whisper in passing. On the third attempt, it clicked. Inside lay a thick envelope, yellowed with age. My name, and my daughter's, was written in my father's hand. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The letters spilled secrets I hadn't imagined. My father had left behind a trust fund for my daughter alone. A fortune that could never legally be accessed by Evan or by Marjorie unless something catastrophic happened to me. The weight of it pressed down on me. My chest tightened. My eyes blurred with tears I couldn't stop. Evan had been hiding, manipulating, planning, and now I understood why. A dangerous clarity settled over me. He wasn't just keeping secrets. He was preparing for something that could strip me away from my child and from my life. I held the letter against my chest, shaking, knowing that everything I thought I understood about my husband, about my family, about trust, had just shattered, and the countdown had already begun. For days, I had lived in a haze of fear and betrayal. Every glance from Marjorie, every word from Evan, had felt like a threat. I was certain she was plotting against me, part of some silent conspiracy to steal my child or ruin my life. But that afternoon, curiosity, or perhaps desperation, pushed me further. While Evan napped with the baby, I quietly entered Marjorie's study, the door creaking just enough to make my heart skip. Shelves lined with legal books, photo albums, and meticulously organized files greeted me. I rifled through them carefully, every sound magnified in my ears. And then I found them. Recordings, notes, and journals carefully cataloged, all detailing Evan's actions. Each entry described his lies, the secret transfers, the manipulations, and the increasingly controlling behavior he displayed. Dates, times, and conversations were recorded meticulously, every entry ending with a careful summary of potential threats to me and the baby. My breath caught. Marjorie wasn't plotting against me. She had been quietly documenting Evan for months. Every cold word, every sharp look, every whispered, "move faster" moment I had overheard. It hadn't been about me. It had been about him. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling. Relief surged, quickly tangled with disbelief. I had misjudged her entirely, letting fear blind me. And yet, even knowing the truth didn't make me feel safe. If Marjorie had gone to such lengths to document him, what would happen when he realized someone was watching? For the first time, the game became real. The stakes weren't just emotional, they were dangerous, and I was right in the middle. The letter in my hands had already shattered my world, but it wasn't until I read Marjorie's notes side by side with Evan's hidden financial movements that the full horror sank in. The transfer they'd whispered about on the baby monitor wasn't money, it was a countdown. A carefully timed, meticulously planned event that could destroy me. 10 days. That was all the time he had given himself. 10 days to make me appear unstable, weak, unfit to care for my daughter. And if he succeeded, no one would ever suspect foul play. To everyone else, it would look like a tragic collapse, a postpartum breakdown gone tragically wrong. My stomach churned. Every laugh he shared at dinner, every tender look he gave the baby, suddenly felt like poison. The man I'd married, the one I had trusted, had been playing a game I didn't even know existed, and the stakes were life and death. I felt my hands tighten into fists, nails biting into my palms. The rage burned alongside a cold, calculating fear. I had to think. I had to move faster than he could anticipate. One misstep, one moment of hesitation, and everything, my life, my daughter, my future, would be gone. And yet, beneath the fear, a tiny spark of clarity glimmered. He had underestimated me. He had assumed I would crumble. He had assumed I would remain silent. The 10-day clock was ticking. But if he thought I would wait for it to run out, he didn't know me at all. This was no longer just survival. This was a fight for justice. I never imagined I would find myself facing Marjorie across her immaculate kitchen table, the air between us taut with unspoken threats and uneasy truths. Her eyes, usually so cold and precise, held something different today, a glimmer of concern, maybe even desperation. "I know what you're thinking," she said softly, folding her hands like a schoolteacher, "that I've been plotting against you, that I'm just another obstacle." I wanted to spit the words back at her. I wanted to yell that I had overheard every whisper, that I had uncovered the letters, the recordings, the lies. But I paused, studying her expression. The hard angles of her face softened just a fraction, and I noticed something I hadn't before, a quiet vigilance, a careful watchfulness. "You're not?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile truth. "No," she replied. "Evan is dangerous, and if you think he's planning to undermine you, you're right. But I'm trying to protect you, from him, from what he's capable of." My mind reeled. The woman I had feared, the one whose every glance had felt like a judgment or a threat, might be my only ally. And yet, could I trust her? Could I risk relying on someone who had been part of this family's web for decades? The tension between us was sharp enough to cut, but in that moment, I realized that survival would require unlikely partnerships. I leaned forward, heart pounding. "Then we work together," I said. "But make no mistake, I'm watching you too." Her lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "And I'll be watching him. Together then." The fragile alliance was set. But even as relief washed over me, a shiver of doubt lingered. Who could truly be trusted in a house built on lies? The 10th day arrived like a storm, heavy and inevitable. Every second felt like it carried the weight of a ticking bomb. Evan moved through the house with an unfamiliar tension, eyes darting, hands fidgeting. For the first time, I saw cracks in his perfect mask. Marjorie and I had spent days preparing, quietly collecting evidence, planning our moves. Every whispered instruction, every hidden note, every recorded conversation was a piece of the trap we had set. And now, it all came down to this. I held the baby close, feeling the tiny heartbeat against my chest, a fragile reminder of what was at stake. Marjorie stood across the room, sharp and watchful, her presence both reassuring and unnerving. We didn't need to speak. Our eyes said everything. Evan entered the living room, unaware that the web of lies he had spun around us was about to snap. He smiled, a thin, practiced curl, and tried to engage me as though nothing had changed. But I saw him, the real Evan, panic creeping behind the mask, the calculation faltering. Then came the moment of confrontation. Carefully, methodically, we presented every hidden truth. The secret accounts, the letters, the recordings, the inconsistencies he had so desperately tried to hide. His face went pale, and for the first time, the power shifted. The betrayal, the fear, the tension, all of it culminated in one undeniable truth. He was defeated. And the real shock came in his reaction. Not violence, not denial, but the revelation that someone he trusted had been part of the plan all along. As silence settled, I cradled my daughter and realized the moral had been clear all along. Sometimes survival requires courage, vigilance, and trusting the most unlikely ally, even when the enemy wears the face of family.